Thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us about your background before your near-death experience? Of course. My name is Jennifer Brooke Turner. I'm 36 years old, and I've been a trauma nurse at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle for the past 8 years. I've always considered myself a rational person, someone who believes in science and measurable facts. Before my experience, I would have dismissed near-death experiences as hallucinations caused by a dying brain. But what happened to me, it changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what comes after. Take us back to that day. What happened? It was a Tuesday morning, around 10:30 a.m. The emergency department was unusually quiet, one of those rare lulls that always feels like the calm before a storm. I'd been on shift since 6 a.m., checking on a teenage patient with a broken arm. Everything felt normal, routine, safe. The monitors were beeping their usual steady rhythm, and sunlight was streaming through the windows, creating patterns on the hospital floor. That's when it happened. Without warning, my chest felt like it was being crushed in a vice. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, sharp, overwhelming, and absolute. I remember reaching for the wall to steady myself, but my hand never made contact. The last thing I heard was my patient screaming for help as I collapsed to the floor. What was the medical cause? The doctors later told me I had suffered a massive pulmonary embolism, a blood clot that had traveled to my lungs. It was caused by an undiagnosed clotting disorder I'd had since birth but never knew about. I was clinically dead for almost 5 minutes. Can you describe what happened during those 5 minutes? Those 5 minutes contained an eternity of experience. The first thing I remember after the darkness was the strange sensation of floating. I found myself looking down at my own body on the hospital floor. The scene below me was chaos. My colleagues, people I'd worked with for years, were desperately trying to save my life. Dr. Martinez, our chief of emergency medicine, was doing chest compressions. His usually calm face was intense with concentration. My best friend Sarah, who I've known since nursing school, was preparing the defibrillator. Her hands were steady, but her face was streaked with tears. I could hear them calling out medical terms I'd used countless times myself. VFib. Clear. Push 1 of AP. Were you afraid when you saw this happening? That's what's remarkable, I felt absolutely no fear. Despite seeing my own lifeless body below, I was filled with a profound sense of peace. All the anxiety, stress, and worry that had been constant companions throughout my life simply vanished. Then everything shifted. I felt myself being drawn away from the hospital room, pulled into what seemed like a tunnel of light. Can you describe this tunnel? The movement through it was incredibly fast, faster than anything I'd ever experienced, yet it felt completely natural. The light grew brighter and brighter, but it didn't hurt my eyes. Instead, it felt warm and welcoming, like coming home after a long journey. As I moved through this tunnel, my consciousness began expanding. Thoughts became clearer, more profound. It was as if I'd been seeing everything through a foggy window before, and now the window had been wiped clean. What happened when you emerged from the tunnel? I found myself in a realm that defies earthly description. The colors were unlike anything I'd ever seen before, colors that don't exist in our physical world. The air itself seemed alive with music, a harmony so beautiful it brought tears to my eyes. But these weren't physical tears. I realized I no longer had a physical body. Instead, I existed as pure consciousness, pure awareness. I understand you had an extraordinary encounter there? Yes. That's when I saw him, Jesus. But not as he's typically portrayed in religious art. His presence was simultaneously overwhelming and intimately familiar. He radiated a love so pure and powerful that I fell to my knees, or at least that was the sensation, though I had no physical form. His light was brighter than the tunnel had been, yet I could look directly at him without discomfort. His eyes held all the wisdom of the universe, but also an infinite compassion that made me feel completely known and completely loved. What did he say to you? He said, "Jennifer, there's something you need to see." His voice wasn't physical, it was more like pure thought being transmitted directly into my consciousness. With a gesture of his hand, the space around us transformed, and he began to show me what happens to souls after death. What I saw was absolutely shocking. Can you elaborate on what you saw? Jesus explained that we were in what he called the third heaven, a transitional realm where souls come immediately after death. It's like a divine way station, a place of healing, learning, and preparation for what comes next. The realm was divided into different sections, each serving a specific purpose. The first area he showed me was called the Gardens of Peace. I saw souls basking in what looked like golden light, some in deep meditation, others in quiet contemplation. The landscape itself was alive, shifting and changing in response to the soul's thoughts and emotions. Jesus explained that these were souls who had lived lives of love and service. They were resting, growing in understanding while awaiting the final resurrection. You mentioned the souls had different appearances? Yes, they seemed to glow with their own inner light, though some shone brighter than others. Jesus explained that the brightness reflected the degree to which they had allowed divine love to work through them during their earthly lives. But even the less bright souls were continuing to grow brighter as they deepened their understanding. What about the other areas you saw? The most fascinating was what Jesus called the halls of learning. Here, souls were engaged in what he called divine learning. There were what looked like amphitheaters of light where newly arrived souls worked with advanced beings, teachers of extraordinary wisdom and compassion. I watched as souls participated in life reviews, but not as judgment. Instead, they could see every action they had taken during their earthly lives from multiple perspectives, not just their own, but from the perspective of everyone their actions had affected. Can you give us an example of what you saw in these reviews? I watched a soul reviewing a moment when they had given money to a homeless person. In the review, they could see how that single act had not only helped the recipient buy food that day but had restored their faith in humanity. This restored faith led them to seek help, eventually turning their life around and going on to help others. The ripple effects of that one kind act had influenced hundreds of lives over time. But I also saw harder reviews, souls learning from their mistakes. One soul was reviewing a moment when they had spoken cruelly to their child. They experienced not only their child's immediate pain but saw how that moment had created a wound that affected their child's relationships and self-worth throughout their life. Yet even this difficult review was surrounded by love and understanding. The teachers helped the soul understand the root of their anger and how to heal both themselves and, from this realm, help heal those they had hurt. Did you see anything about how the dead interact with the living? Yes, and this was one of the most beautiful parts. I saw souls working together to help those still on earth, what we often call guardian angels. Many are souls who have chosen to stay in this realm to help guide and protect those still living. I actually recognized my grandmother among them, looking exactly as she did in her prime, vibrant, full of life and love. She showed me countless moments where she had been present, sending love, guidance, and protection. I saw her comforting my mother during her battle with cancer, standing beside my brother during his wedding, and even helping to guide my hands during particularly difficult moments in the emergency room. She told me, "Every prayer is heard, every moment of need is known." We can't always prevent difficulties because challenges are necessary for growth, but we can send love, strength, and guidance. Sometimes we can even help prevent accidents or guide people to make better choices, though we must always respect free will. What about souls who had lived troubled lives? This was one of the most eye-opening parts of my experience. Jesus showed me what he called the healing chambers, not physical rooms, but states of being where souls who carried deep wounds from their earthly lives were being gently healed by beings of pure light. These souls might have suffered from trauma, addiction, anger, or fear during their earthly lives. Some had even committed terrible acts. Jesus explained that this is what human religions often misunderstand: no soul is ever beyond redemption. Even those who lived the darkest lives have the capacity for transformation. I watched as souls who had done terrible things underwent profound healing. It wasn't punishment, it was rehabilitation through pure love. These souls were facing the truth of their actions, feeling the full impact of the pain they had caused, but always supported by divine love and understanding. The process was intense but always guided by compassion. How did souls communicate with each other in this realm? It was entirely different from earthly communication, not through words, but through pure thought and emotion. I witnessed beautiful reunions between family members who had been separated by death, but these reunions transcended earthly relationships. Even souls who had been enemies in life were reconciling, understanding the higher purpose of their earthly conflicts. The most remarkable thing was that no lies or deception were possible in this realm. Every interaction was based on pure truth. Did you learn anything about time in this realm? Time as we know it doesn't exist there. Jesus explained that what might seem like centuries of healing and growth can happen in what earth measures as moments. Every soul progresses at exactly the pace they need. You mentioned seeing something about creation? Yes, this was absolutely mind-blowing. In one area, more advanced souls were actually helping to create new realities. These souls had learned enough to assist in the divine act of creation itself. I watched in awe as these beings worked with pure energy, helping to design new worlds, new life forms, and even helping to guide the evolution of existing planets. Jesus explained that Earth is just one small school in a vast universe of learning. There are countless realms and dimensions where souls can grow and evolve. The physical universe we know is just the beginning. Was there anything difficult or challenging that you saw? Yes. Jesus showed me an area where souls had chosen to remain in darkness. Unlike the other areas, this space felt cold and isolated. But what touched me was seeing beings of light continuously offering love to these souls, never giving up, never condemning. Jesus explained that this is true divine love. It never forces, never condemns, but also never gives up. Every soul, no matter how lost, will eventually find their way back to love. It's not a matter of if, but when. Did Jesus share anything about Earth's current state? Yes, he showed me that humanity is at a turning point. The choices being made now will determine much about the future, but he emphasized that free will is absolute. The future is not set in stone. He showed me potential futures, some beautiful beyond imagination, others deeply troubling. I saw a future where humanity had learned to live in harmony with each other and with nature, where technology was used for the benefit of all, where love and wisdom guided all decisions. But I also saw potential futures where humanity's choices led to great suffering and destruction. What did he say was the key to a better future? Love. Not just abstract love, but love in action. Every act of kindness, every moment of forgiveness, every choice for peace over conflict shapes not just the individual soul but the collective future of humanity. He showed me the interconnected web of all existence, how every soul is connected to every other soul, how every action affects the whole, how love is the force that binds everything together. What was the most profound truth you learned? Jesus showed me that the greatest illusion is the illusion of separation. All souls, all beings, all of creation is connected in ways our earthly minds can barely comprehend. The love we give to others, we give to ourselves. The harm we do to others, we do to ourselves. This is why forgiveness and love are so crucial. They are the forces that heal not just individual souls, but the entire fabric of existence. Can you tell us about coming back? Before I returned, Jesus gave me a mission. He said, "Tell them what you've seen. Tell them that death is not the end, that every soul continues its journey, that love is the most powerful force in existence, and that no one is ever truly lost." He shared one final truth that shook me to my core. The greatest illusion is the illusion of separation. All souls, all beings, all of creation is connected in ways our earthly minds can barely comprehend. The love we give to others, we give to ourselves. The harm we do to others, we do to ourselves. Suddenly, I felt myself being pulled back. The last thing I heard was Jesus saying, "Remember, love is not just a feeling, it's a choice, and it's a choice that must be made again and again in every moment." I gasped awake on the hospital floor, surrounded by my colleagues. The defibrillator had just delivered its third shock. According to the medical records, I had been clinically dead for 4 minutes and 52 seconds, but those minutes contained an eternity of understanding. How has this experience changed you? I've never been the same since that day. I no longer fear death, but I value life even more deeply. I see every person as a soul on a journey, deserving of love and understanding. I know that our time on Earth is precious, a unique opportunity to learn and grow in ways that aren't possible in other realms. My work as a nurse has taken on new meaning. When I look at patients now, I don't just see their physical bodies, I see their souls, bright and beautiful despite any outer circumstances. I understand that healing involves not just the body but the soul as well. Sometimes, when conditions are right, I can even sense the presence of the beings of light who help guide and comfort both patients and healthcare workers. What's the most important truth you learned from your experience? What I learned about what dead people are doing right now is far more beautiful and purposeful than most of us imagine. They're not just resting in peace, they're actively growing, learning, healing, and even helping to shape the future of existence itself. And the love that connects all souls never dies, it only grows stronger as we progress through the different realms of existence. Every prayer is heard, every act of love creates waves of light that ripple through all dimensions of reality, healing and uplifting everything they touch. The dead are not gone, they're more alive than ever, participating in a grand process of cosmic evolution that we can barely comprehend from our earthly perspective. Until we understand this truth for ourselves, our task is simple but profound: to learn to love more deeply, forgive more readily, and live more fully, knowing that every choice we make shapes not just our own soul's journey but the journey of all creation itself. Jennifer, thank you for sharing your remarkable experience with us. Thank you for allowing me to share. I hope this story offers hope and understanding about the journey we're all on. Whether people believe my experience or not, I hope they can take away this essential truth: love is the force that moves the universe, and every act of love, no matter how small, ripples through eternity.